On behalf of Crosscheck Media and Biz Talk Today TV, welcome everyone to Buy, Hold, Sell. I am your trader, Todd Schoenberger. Joining me today is Aquiles Larrea. He is the founder and CEO of Larrea Wealth Management. Achilles, you were on one of our programs a couple of weeks ago. Very optimistic. You called this market. We are at a record high. I don't know how you did it. You must have a crystal ball, Achilles. But my question for you is the train going to keep rolling? Will we see higher highs by the end of the year?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if we do. As a matter of fact, we're shaking out all these different sales that are going on with the hedge funds, mutual funds, and large investors. So we also seeing that we are on track as far as these Fed cuts are concerned. So that being said, the market loves certainty, Todd, and they love the fact that this is going to happen, and we should see some record highs in the market. Now, that doesn't mean we're gonna, we're not going to face some near-term resistance because we're still shaking out in a couple of areas. But I believe that we're definitely going to see some new highs in the technology area, in consumer cyclicals. We're also going to see some challenges going forward with unemployment, with, and just as an overview, with unemployment, with inflation, even though we had some good numbers today, really much ado about nothing, so it wasn't a whole lot there for us to digest. And also with this government shutdown, the Fed doesn't really have all the numbers that it needs to have at this particular point. So that's another thing we could talk about too.
Well, that's a good point because you have a Fed who likes to say that they're data dependent. And right now they're probably data delusional because they've only received the one report, which is today, the CPI report, which was much softer than anticipated. So here we have this special report that comes out and markets just shot higher. So it does beg the question. I mean, what will the Fed do next week? Because that really is their only key metric that they can really focus on, right?
Yeah, it's funny. They're flying blind, for lack of a better word, right now, but there's still other data. You got ADP data, you have other data from private sources, not as large as the government, of course, but this is giving you a little bit of an insight if you're the Fed. But you have to also say to yourself, well, what happens now? And what I think is going to happen is they are going to continue on this course, Todd, of cutting interest rates. They're going to do this month. There's 97% consensus certainty that they're going to do it for this month. Next month, we don't have that. But for December, absolutely, we're on track once again for another cut. And I believe, Todd, that in January of 26, we're going to see another cut. And that is going to bring the rates down. If you haven't done your math, almost a percent, three-quarters of a percent. And we might see even more if inflation remains untamed. Now, once again, you said we don't have the numbers. The Fed doesn't have the numbers to make logical guesstimates towards how do we control inflation? How do we control unemployment? But Todd, I would also submit to you the last quarter of the year is an area where there's so many layoffs that occur before the holidays because corporations are trying to get lean. So they have to trim the fat, much to the chagrin of the consumer, much to the chagrin of the holidays and sort. But these are important points to keep in mind as we're making our investment decisions going forward.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, Ebenezer Scrooge could actually get the bulls actually falling off the tracks here and probably bring in the bears at least in the short term. But I do like your thesis though, where you're still optimistic. Earnings are solid, so far so good. Guidance has been good. We haven't been hearing that those challenging lines about tariffs or potential inflation or even global supply chain pressures. So that does give me a little bit of optimism where I'm feeling, hey, this stock market is going to continue rolling well past fourth quarter. And like you said, if we see rate cuts in January, Whoo, boy, I tell you, we're going to be seeing this thing rolling and continuing on. Let's talk a little bit about sectors, though, and investments, because this is a trading show. So I know you love technology. You're talking about people possibly maybe spending money. What are your thoughts on some of your favorite sectors, though, other than tech?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm still very I'm a perennial bull on this new nuclear technology that's out there.
Okay.
Companies like NewScale are a company that we recommended last month, up over 10% since the time we recommended. So not a bad choice there. And
Wow, that's a huge, because that was just a couple of weeks ago. That's incredible.
yeah, yeah.
Good call.
Sometimes we get lucky, Todd. And why something like that I think is going to be the future is that as I've mentioned to you before, AI uses up a ton of resources in terms of energy. You're not going to get it from oil. You're not going to get it from solar. So modular nuclear technology, where NewScale is the preeminent provider at this particular point. I think they're a dominator in the particular sector. So that's one area to look at very closely. And I believe the opportunity is just starting right now. So there's more opportunity to make more money there. I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about this next time this year. Yeah, I mean, next year at this time, we could see a double-digit increase, which is what traders are looking for. Also, we love Microsoft at this point. Microsoft reinvented itself. They became, they went from an operating system company, and now they're so deep into the AI sector. So they're hiring nuclear physicists to assist them with efficiencies in the nuclear energies that they need at this particular point. But the company has benefited greatly from going into this trend. As they say, as traders will say, the trend is your friend. The trend has most certainly been very friendly to Microsoft. Double-digit increases. We continue to see that trend going forward. Another area and I may have mentioned this before with you, that I just love right now. I'm not a big fan of retail, but I do love seeing certain sectors like cyclicals, certain areas like infrastructure plays, and of course, I love data storage. I mean, that's kind of technology, but data storage
It is.
companies, that like Kingsoft, these are companies that are so undervalued. They remind me of Palantir when I went on Schwab Network and recommended them last January at $17. All right. And now they're in the
Wow.
160s. They remind me of a similar potentiality. Quantum computers, Ion Q. This is another company that they are at the forefront of their technologies, but nobody's really picked up upon the potential of quantum computing right now. We talk about Boyle's law and how technology grows in leaps and bounds with that law. Can you imagine that on steroids? That's what I think quantum computing is going to become in that respect, Todd.
That's incredible. Yeah, and your Palantir call had to be the pick of the year. And I think you were with Nicole Petalides on the Schwab Network when you came up with that call. It was amazing. So big thumbs up for that one. What's your thoughts on the oil sector? After, as you know, on Wednesday night, the White House had said they will impose sanctions on two oil producers out of Russia in the hopes of bringing Putin to the negotiating table to end this war. We saw oil spike 5.3% yesterday. Some of the oil companies, though, especially the big three, they moved, but not as much as I think a lot of people were expecting. What's your opinion on the sector?
Yeah, I think that this sector is going to achieve modest growth going forward in the future. Year over year, you're still seeing companies like Occidental Petroleum, even BP, which has lagged behind, is starting to see moves towards the upside. But you don't get into these companies for solely growth, Todd. You get into these companies for a combination of growth and dividends.
Hmm.
A decent dividend with any company, the growth is the gravy. The dividend is the real reason why you get into that. The whole sector as a whole will give you great dividends. But more importantly, if you can get that balance of both coming in, you're going to do really well as part of a balanced portfolio. Now, not balance as we've seen in traditional mutual funds doing nothing. We're talking more about your own portfolio, adding some depth and some high quality in there because oil companies are going to continue to make money. We are still using fossil fuels at incredible paces in spite of the technology that we're seeing, with all the electronic vehicles and the future with hydrogen and the like. But these are technologies that are not ready for prime time as of yet, in my opinion. So we're going to see that spending. We're also seeing record spending with electrical, companies like Constellation, companies like Con Ed here in New York. We're still seeing that record pricing, where easily, double, triple pricing in those areas. Now, that is not sustainable, Todd, but at the same time, it's sure going to add to the bottom line. That's for sure.
Well, I think electricity is going to be the big theme of 2026. I mean, because you have strategists and experts like yourself that like to talk about it, and but it's not the headline story just yet. But that if there are opportunities in electricity, I think investors would be to their advantage to take a look and consider something like that for other opportunities next year. But back to the oil trade, I have my eye on Energy Transfer. Now, this is a company, the symbol is ET. The yield and brilliant analysis there, Achilles, because you are right. On the oil in the oil sector, it's important to look at the dividend income that's coming out. Energy Transfer has, I think it's an 8% dividend yield, truly revolutionary because the company continues to increase its dividend 3 to 5% every year because of the oil royalties that they have coming in. So definitely a one of those companies you want to take a look at. What other sectors do you like? What about healthcare? I want to get your opinion on this because this seems to be one of those subjects now that since the Trump administration is telling companies, think of Ozempic that has to start, lowering their costs. You look at Pfizer, look at Eli Lilly. Trump RX is now a reality. What's your opinion on the healthcare sector?
Yeah, it's no longer a focus of Obamacare. It's now Trump RX. And what we see there, there's still near term excellent opportunities to make money. Companies like Humana, companies like CVS, but they're going to face a lot of near term resistance. So, as traders, what you're getting yourself into. I would definitely play them as short term plays with the possibility of growth. I would also look at the telehealth sector. Companies like TelDoc, I've had conversations with other investors, with other institutional investors about companies like these, and we feel that going forward, this could and is the future of medicine going forward. You want, in spite of the lower costs, I think that this country, for better or for worse, is heading towards a crossroads. I think we are going to, at some point, have no recourse but to have some form of healthcare for all,
Hmm.
much to the chagrin of certain types of parties and the like. But I don't think there's a choice here. I think the costs have become so exorbitant that they are absolutely not sustainable. There's going to have to be some happy medium. We are the only country in the big scheme of the world, who does not have some form of that. So I think that there is opportunity still there in the healthcare sector, but the growth might come back down to reality as we see in the oil sector. It's going to be, in my opinion, a challenged sector probably for the next 18 months.
Interesting. So you nearly touched the chalk line of politics here. So I'm going to go right over it. So what about the defense sector? Republicans, as you know, the defense tends to do well when there's a Republican in the White House. This is a second term Republican, though, and so I have to wonder: is the defense sector an area that investors should focus on?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, take a look at Raytheon. Look at the growth that's going on with Raytheon, Grumman, Northrop Grumman,
Mm,
even much maligned air companies like Boeing.
mm,
I mean, I I was on the air talking about, after the 737 Max disasters, I call them.
mm.
I was talking about Boeing. Uh, Everybody thought I was nuts. Everybody said nobody wants to get into this now. I said, when do you get into a company? When it's beaten up. Thankfully, the defense sector as a whole is doing really good. Now, you alluded to that the Republicans, a Republican administration is very favorable. Yes, yes, absolutely. But if you look at the Obama administration, the Clinton administration, defense spending went up astronomically. So it's
Hmm.
not just a Republican theme. It is an absolute American theme where we want to keep those people working. We want to be innovators in military technology. We want to be innovators in aerospace dynamics, innovators in space. And that's why we have to be in it to win it.
You're right. And historically speaking, the Republicans would actually go through the procurement exercise and sign contracts. And then, generally, that first term of a Democratic president, you would see defense stocks doing so well, only because the contracts were put into place when the Republican was leaving office. This time around, you have a Republican administration that obviously, with the defense secretary Hegseth, they do talk about quite a bit on the defense side. So now is a good time, I think personally, to look at the defense sector, and hopefully it will continue on regardless of who wins in 28 and which party's in control. So, Achilles, you're a very smart guy. You wrote a book. I mean, this is like Smart 2.0. Can you tell the audience a little bit about it?
Yeah, this is my second book. It's called Wise Up with Your Money. It's been 5 years since the last book, which was more tailored for the Latino audience, but it really, Your Money and You was actually written for a general audience. The Wise Up with Your Money I wanted to rectify that and appeal to a broader audience where you need discipline. You need to go into portfolios not as a timid person, that you need to go in, hey, I can make money for myself, but why do I have to do this alone? I can use someone like myself to go in there, let them do the heavy lifting, let them do the hard part about this. And that way we can all make money and benefit. Todd, if I said to you, okay, I'm shooting for 20% this year, and I make you 14%, but it costs you 2%, are you going to hate me?
No, not at all.
We're going to
Achilles,
make
we can
money.
never hate you.
We're going to make money no
Yeah.
matter what, using discipline, using dividends, growth, even using bonds. Can you believe, Todd, that I made double digits on bonds? But I don't do it long
Wow.
term. What I end up doing is if there's an opportunity to take these discounted bonds and make a little bit more return on them, along with the interest that's in certain bond sector, the ETFs in the bonds are they're going to make you even more money. So it's just the gravy right now, Todd. It's just a little bit of gravy to go along with you. You had your big feast, and now we're coming out with dessert, and now we got that little cream coming along.
Oh my goodness. Achilles, just saying it all. I tell you, that is amazing. And that book, I know we're airing live right now, but when we put up the edited version, look right here on the bottom here, you will see the title of the of Achilles book. You got to go check it out. You got to buy it, and you got to go to larreawealth.com. You definitely want to see what Achilles has to say there, because these are amazing picks, Achilles. Amazing. You always bring it when you come here to Buy, Hold, Sell, as well as our other shows at Crosscheck Media. So I appreciate you so much for joining me today.
Happy and honored to be here.
Thank you so much. So on behalf of Aquiles Larrea, I am Todd Schoenberger. Thank you for joining us on Buy, Hold, Sell. You definitely want to watch Monday's show, Power Hour. We have Danielle Cohen-Higgins. She is the Miami-Dade County Commissioner. You will not believe what she is going to say in an exclusive one-on-one with James Breslow. They're going to be talking all about the Miami mayoral race, including what's going on in New York City. So you definitely want to see it, because she has some behind-the-curtain details you have not heard anywhere else. So until then, have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Enjoy the record high, pop some champagne, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Buy, Hold, Sell, brought to you by Crosscheck Management.